Hey guys, Explorer of Horror here, Horror Boy 465, and today, talking about a slightly disturbing film, and that is My Friend Dahmer. Now, My Friend Dahmer came out in 2017, it's a 6.3 on IMDb, and it was directed by Mark Myers. And this film is pretty good. I think that this movie is definitely separate from like all the other serial killer flicks. Um, and I haven't seen all the serial killer flicks. I know there's pretty much one on every big serial killer. Like they got a Bundy one, an Ed Gein one, and the Ed Gein one actually has Kane Hodder playing Ed Gein, so I might want to check that out. But you have like I said, Ed Gein, Bundy, Gacy, which I seen a movie called. I actually seen two Gacy movies. I seen the one where it's like a haunted house movie with paranormal activity type cameras, and they go inside of Gacy's house, and there's ghosts in there of Gacy, and that was honestly pretty bad. I really didn't like that movie. I thought I would like it because the cover looked pretty creepy and the idea sounded pretty creepy, but just the execution kind of ruined that movie. I don't know if I'll ever review it, but I think I reviewed it once back in like 2013 because that was when I first saw it. I think it was back in 2013. I did a review for it, and I remember liking it for some reason, but I watched it again, not recently, like a year ago, and I thought it was just terrible. But yeah, I seen that, and I seen a decent one called Gacy, and I thought that it was pretty decent. I just think that there wasn't really much to it other than them just going through what happened in the murder. Like, there wasn't really anything else to it. And also, I think that I just wasn't really into the acting performances, and I don't know. It was okay. I can't hate the movie, but I thought it was just decent. And then I've also seen Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which so far is my favorite serial killer type flick because I believe that was based on Henry Lee Lucas, and that was just amazing. I would have to say that one's a little bit more better than this one, but this is definitely one of my favorite adaptations. Now, I know that this is not the first Dahmer film. I think there was just one called Dahmer, and I think that came out way before this one did. Yeah, this one, the first Dahmer movie came out in 2002, gets a 5.6, and that actually had Jeremy Renner playing Dahmer, which I always found interesting because I'm like, what? He played a serial killer? I really didn't know that. But in this one, it's not really about Dahmer's adulthood. As a matter of fact, the only part of Dahmer's life you see in this movie is kind of his teenage years. And when I seen the trailer for this movie, that was the thing that mainly interested me about this film, was that it wasn't trying to do what all those other serial killer type movies were doing. And mainly those movies were just focusing on maybe a little bit of the origin story of how they became crazy, and then most of it is their adult life and them killing people. What I liked about this movie is that it didn't do that. As a matter of fact, you don't see Dahmer kill anything in this movie. He comes close to killing some things a couple times, and you get an idea that, maybe he had, but I'm talking about like on-screen killing. There's really no on-screen killing in this film. So it's weird. You're watching a movie about a serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, and you don't see one death scene in the film. So I think that's really great. I probably should have said spoiler alert before I said that. But it's not really a spoiler. I mean, really, it's not even marketed as a serial killer flick. So I'm not even going to say that I should need a spoiler alert there, because really, if you look at it, it's marketed as an early life of a serial killer type of movie. And I guess from here on, spoiler alert, if that's needed, but probably should have said that in the beginning. My apologies. But yeah, I mean, the movie's very good. I think it's very well shot, and I want to get into the plotline really quick, but we'll talk about some of the things I like about it in a minute. But basically, the movie, like I said, is about the earlier years of Jeffrey Dahmer. It's pretty much him going through high school, and talking about a little bit about his high school life, and how he struggled with being gay. So there's a lot of that in this movie. There's a lot of really awkward scenes in this movie with like one in particular, which we'll talk about a little bit more, is one when he's in this doctor's office, and he's getting a physical, and it's pretty awkward scene. But he's struggling with that. You have him collecting dead animals, roadkill, and dissolving them in acid he gets from his dad's kind of laboratory. Um, it shows his home life being very destructive. His mom is just gone. I don't know if it was drugs or dementia, whatever she was gone from. She was just gone, and she was crazy. And she kicked his, and she didn't kick his dad out yet. But in the beginning of the movie, his dad's still there, and his wife is still there. So Dahmer's parents are just arguing constantly. Dahmer's father kind of is a little bit ashamed of what Dahmer's become. Like he doesn't really have that many friends, and throughout the movie, his dad tries to make him more social. Destroys this little shack, this little shed that Dahmer does kind of experiments in. He's like, you need to become more active, and you need to get out there and know people. And I think that one of the things that I gotta say right here is that in Devil's Rejects, they tried to get you like the serial killers, and in my opinion, it failed. It fell right on its face, because if you're gonna try and make a character likable, you gotta at least do it like this. And I get it that Jeffrey Dahmer is a monster. What he did was unforgivable, and it was terrible. He's a murderer. He's a psychopath. He's a sicko. And I agree with every single one of those things. But in this film, if you want to learn how to get your audience to sympathize with a serial killer, they really do it in this movie. Not saying that you totally are a fan of this character and that you're really behind him. It's not really like that. There's just some moments where you see that maybe if his life wasn't so messed up, he could have went on to do better things, because they touch on a lot of different things in the movie. Like he has good communication skills. He just doesn't really use them that much. He's kind of a shy person in school, but when he does talk, he can talk like, he talks to the phone and gets these people and interviewed the vice president. And he's very much into anatomy and science, so maybe he could have gone and become sort of scientist or something like that. But it's just the way that his life played out just made him completely insane. And you kind of see that in this movie. You kind of see the little things that kind of make him go crazier and crazier. The fact that he's living in a time where being gay is something that's very hush-hush. You do not say it. You did not say it back in the 70s. Or if you did, you'd probably get lynched, or you'd get freaking killed, or you'd get beat up like severely. So he really couldn't, say anything about that. His family was destructive. His social life was off. His awkwardness was always like, I like how they kind of made it to where Jeffrey Dahmer was kind of this sideshow attraction that this one guy in the movie kind of becomes his friend. They make the Dahmer Club, and they do a couple of pranks here and there, and even one of his friends is starting to catch on to him kind of using Dahmer as kind of this sideshow freak. And because there's points in the movie where Dahmer is kind of joking around and doing this funny voice and acts like he's having a seizure or whatever and falls on the floor. I guess it's kind of how Dahmer was in high school. He was kind of like that. He was awkward, but if he wanted to be funny, he could be funny. And you also had a point in this movie where he discusses in interviews, he starts combining this kind of sexual desire with death. And that kind of plays out a little bit. There's points in the movie where he almost kills people. Like, there's a scene in the movie where he's walking behind someone with a baseball bat, about to hit them, and he kind of puts the bat down because he can't do it. So you got those really crazy moments in the film that I think just make the movie just really intense. So it got some really intense stuff in this film. And basically, like I said, it's going through his high school years, and he ends up becoming a part of this club, and he gets these people and interviewed the vice president. And it's a pretty awesome scene where they go up and they meet the vice president, and it was all because Dahmer just asked to go see the vice president. And pretty much from there on, and that's one of the things about this movie is that it definitely focuses on factual evidence. about Dahmer's earlier life, um, and they use that a lot in the film. I've seen a documentary about Dahmer's kind of life. It wasn't just about his earlier days; about pretty much from beginning to end, to beginning of his life to when he became a serial killer to even his prison life. It was a pretty interesting documentary. And I was noticing that this movie really did keep true to those facts. He really did get an interview with the vice president. He really did have good communication skills. He really did get roadkill and do all this stuff. So it was really based off of facts. And pretty much like I said, the movie goes through. There's a couple of scenes where he starts noticing men and starts to discover he's gay, and those scenes are just really awkward and intense. And I think they were kind of meant to be that because while you're watching them, you're just kind of like feeling a little bit uncomfortable. But there's just a lot of stuff in the movie that's like that, not just done with that subject. There's also scenes where he's showing these kids, like not kids, but like these teenagers. They're like, "What are you doing with that roadkill?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm about to put it in some acid." And they're like, "Oh no way!" And he shows them, and he has all these little animals in jars. And he's like, "Oh yeah, this is one that I got like 2 weeks ago, and it's completely dissolved almost." Like it's a pretty crazy scene. Like I said, there's a lot of scenes where he's getting ready to kill somebody and he has to stop. Those are really intense. But I think that like as the movie goes on, he discovers alcohol. His mom moves away. His dad's out of the house, so he's home alone pretty much. His friends kind of just use him for being funny. They kind of just use him like as if he was a freak, and they're not really truly his friends. They're just kind of using him to get popular and stuff like that. And they even say like, "Oh, well, Dahmer's never going to go to prom." And Dahmer he overhears that, and he uses his kind of talking abilities to talk to this girl and end up taking him to prom. And so that's what I mean. It kind of shows that Dahmer is awkward. Dahmer is kind of a weaker character, but he can do this stuff if he really wanted to. And the movie kind of just goes through, and Dahmer more and more kind of spirals out of control. He drinks really heavily. He has these really bad urges to kill people. He is done with all this stuff. And then pretty much the end of the movie is about everybody pretty much graduating from high school and going to college. And he even asks his friend, like, "What college are you going to go to?" I think he says, like, Pittsburgh or whatever. And Dahmer actually says he's going to go to Ohio State, which is crazy. And I remember watching the documentary, and I just spit a lot saying that. But I remember I was watching a documentary about Dahmer's life, and it actually said that, yeah, he went to Ohio State. I don't think he lasted very long there, but I know that he went to Ohio State, and that's pretty crazy because I'm a big fan of the Ohio State Buckeyes, so it's like, it's kind of crazy. I've been on that campus before, so it's kind of crazy that I was on the campus that Jeffrey Dahmer was kind of on. So it's pretty insane thinking about that. But the end of the movie, pretty much, if you look at it, the movie's just all leading up to his first kill. Because the end of the movie, he's driving this car and he sees this hitchhiker. And in the documentary, he takes that hitchhiker back and kills him. And I think he like spreads his remains all over the backyard. And in this movie, they don't show it, but they show the hitchhiker getting in the car and them driving off, and then it says that Jeffrey Dahmer, killed him, and then it would say that Jeffrey Dahmer later on be responsible for these murders, and the movie ends. So really, it's a big lead up to the first kill, Jeffrey Dahmer's first kill. But it's a very interesting film because it's not, and that's why I said this, it's not just a serial killer flick. Really, it's not even involving any murders. It's not really involving any killing. There's some scenes where Jeffrey Dahmer almost kills someone. There's one really intense scene where he has this dog, and he has his knife to his throat, and he can't kill it though. And that was a really, crazy scene. There's scenes where he's getting ready to kill people, and he just stops. And I think that this movie is a great, I don't know what I'd say, maybe a good character study of Jeffrey Dahmer, his earlier days, before he became, a serial killer, and kind of the events leading up to him becoming a serial killer. And like I said, I'm not going to say that Jeffrey Dahmer is just a 100% likable character in this film, but you do feel sorry for him. There are points where you think you're like, man, this if this kid wouldn't have been through this stuff, he could have went on to do good things. But unfortunately, he went through these different things, and it made him go crazy. And he started combining sexual urges with murder, and started getting all messed up in the head. But you really do feel bad for the character sometimes. There's points in the movie where, you know, there are people picking on him and calling him a freak, and he pretty much is treated as a freak of nature, or not a freak of nature, but he's treated as the outcast kind of, and he kind of does get kind of notoriety for being this kind of crazy, funny character, but nobody really cares about Dahmer. And that's the thing, like, nobody really, his parents really don't, his friends don't. So really, Dahmer, throughout the movie, is just kind of by himself. And it just, those kind of things. That's why I said Devil's Rejects want to do this freaking crap where they want to make the character so unlikable, but yet they still want you to like them. Like, that's not going to freaking work. That's why I never really got that ending. Because, like, well, that ending is supposed to be you're feeling sorry for the characters because they're being killed by the police. I'm like, dude, they killed and murdered innocent people. How am I supposed to feel sorry for them, They're the bad guys. Granted, you can have anti-heroes, and that's a different thing. But when you have serial killers in a film, in a horror film, especially knowing that in the first movie, what they did, and the second movie, everything they did, yeah, you're not going to sympathize with them. At least I didn't. That's why I didn't get that ending, because it's like, if you don't get the ending, it's pointless to watch the ending, because it's like, basically, if you're not behind the characters, they're just pretty much glamorizing the bad guys. And it's like, why? I get it's different, but, still. I really do enjoy that film. I love Devil's Rejects, but still. It's just something that I didn't really, like in that movie. Also, Texas Chainsaw 3D, they tried to do the same thing. Having these crooked, bad people who took out the Leatherface family and trying to make either side look good isn't going to work. Like, trying to make the crooked people, I don't think they're trying to make them look good. I think it was they were trying to make the Sawyer family look good. Or they were trying to make Leatherface look like a good guy. And I was like, that just, it kind of doesn't work. And that's the thing, like, it could work if it's done like this. If you do it like this, subtle and not so obvious that you're trying to make a good guy out of a bad guy, then I think it could work. And here, they're not trying to make they're not trying to make Dahmer this amazing person. They're just trying to show you who Dahmer was, what he went through, and how these events played out. And I like that about this film. I think some of the strongest thing about this film is that it really does have, like, a really great atmosphere. The way the movie's shot, the way the movie looks, I don't know if it was just the kind of camera they were using, but it looks really good. Kind of has that, and it was weird because Last House on the Left did the same thing, and it was in the 70s, how they're using, I think, real locations, and at least it's what it looks like. It looks like real locations. Sorry about that, the camera kind of cut for a second, but yeah, like I said, it uses real locations. The outside woods areas look really awesome. Lighting is really good. I think just looking at the film, it looks great. I think that the actor who played Jeffrey Dahmer did a great job. Portrayed this character exactly how he was described in the documentary. So I thought he did a really good job with that. The rest of the actors did a really good job as well. It is intense. It is creepy. It is pretty unsettling. It's pretty factual. So overall, I think it's a pretty accurate film to Jeffrey Dahmer's earlier life. I honestly really enjoyed it. Thought it was really great. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching the review on My Friend Dahmer. I'll see you guys in the next one. Hope you guys enjoyed. And y'all know how it is. The Explorer of Horror is out. See y'all later.